The clock in the bedroom read 12:14 when the phone on the bedside table suddenly vibrated, illuminating the room with a soft white light. Tom Hardy woke not from the vibration, he was not sensitive to such things. He woke from the anxiety that came out of nowhere, as if a cold wave had passed down his spine. Sleep still kept his consciousness half disconnected, but his gaze had already fallen on the phone screen. Please help. They found me. Coordinates, 51.5074, 0.1278. A. Unknown number. No photo. No message history. A second, two, and then Tom sat up in bed. At first he thought it was some kind of mistake. A prank? But something in the words was too sincere. Not inherent in the actor's exaggeration or the usual panic. It was a challenge. Real. And it was signed with just one letter, A. He clicked on the message again, checked the coordinates. Google Maps was loading slowly, and after a few seconds it became clear. The point on the map was outside the city, in a wooded area, where an old estate had once stood, abandoned back in the 80s. Hardy had been there once, on the set of a low-budget series, when he was still an unknown actor. He was struck then by how neglected the house looked, as if time had stopped right there. He got up, went to the window. Darkness had fallen over London. The city was sleeping like a child after a hard day. Thoughts were already raging in his head. Was it really worth leaving somewhere in the middle of the night for a text message from a stranger? But he couldn't forget one element, the handwriting. No, not literally, but the tone. There was fear in the message, compressed in every character. And then, the word, they. Who are they? Hardy brewed a strong coffee, put on a simple black sweater, jeans, and pulled out an old hooded jacket. He left the house as quietly as a shadow. When he got in his car, he opened the message again. The temptation to reply was strong, but he felt, this was not the case. If the woman did not write back, then she could not. Or she was afraid that someone would read her message. The road was empty. The night lights trembled in his mirrors, and the whisper of the engine was the only sound in the world. The closer he got to the coordinates, the stronger he felt something strange. As if he was not looking for someone on this journey, but someone had been waiting for him for a long time. Towards the end of the road, the navigator began to lose signal. For the last half-kilometer, he drove intuitively, through a narrow path surrounded by trees that bent over the car like the backs of old sentries, and then he saw it, an abandoned house. The windows were shattered, the roof had partially caved in, but a dim light flickered from inside that he turned off the engine. Darkness immediately enveloped the car on all sides. For a moment, it seemed as if everything had stopped, even the wind. But then, somewhere far away in the forest, there was a crack. As if someone had stepped on a dry branch. Hardy slowly got out, closed the car door, and looked back at the house. No more text messages came. But he had a feeling that from that moment on, life would never be the same again. The moment Tom stepped over the threshold was like crossing the line between two worlds. Everything that had come before, the late-night coffee, the pulsating silence of London, even his own name, had remained somewhere outside. Inside this house, there was a different time. A different air. A different reality. The flashlight on his phone shook in his hand, not from fear, at least not openly, but from that nervous energy that grips a person before something unknown. He walked slowly down the corridor. The floor creaked under his feet. Something creaked faintly from above, whether it was wooden beams or something else still hidden in the darkness. The walls were peeling, covered with writing. Not graffiti but like notes left in a hurry. Don't trust them. She saw what she shouldn't have seen. Beware of the fifth. And again the symbol A. It was either a signature or a sign. Or perhaps the handwriting of the same hand, desperately begging to be found. At the far end of the corridor, a light flickered dimly. A small lamp on a long wire swung like a pendulum. It was the only source of life in the entire house. And just below it, a silhouette. A woman. She sat wrapped in an old blanket, like a shadow that had just been torn from the wall. Her eyes were wide open, like windows through which a storm was raging. When she saw Tom, she did not scream. She did not surprise. She only whispered, "You have come." The voice was barely audible, as if her throat had been constricted by long days of silence. Tom did not answer immediately. He approached slowly, cautiously. "You are?" he asked. She nodded. She clutched the blanket even tighter. Her left shoulder trembled. "What's your name?" "It doesn't matter," she said quietly. "It's as if I'm gone." A pause. The wind somewhere above tore off something metal. The sound fell into the room with a dull thud. "What happened?" Tom finally asked. "You wrote to me." "But why me?" The woman looked down. There was weariness in her eyes. But also something deeper. Decision. And fear. "Because you're the last person they don't control access to. They're watching everyone. Politicians, journalists, even some philanthropists. They're all connected. But you're an actor. They think you're safe. And that's your strength." He felt something cold run down his spine. "They? Who is they?" She glanced out the window, as if checking to see if anyone could hear her. "I saw something I wasn't supposed to see. 3 years ago. Documents, videos, evidence. About the children. About the kidnappings. About what big people were covering up. They made me silent. I disappeared. Changed my name. But I didn't destroy everything. I left one copy. The only one. And now they know. They're after me." Tom felt his body tense. It all sounded almost like a movie script, but every intonation, every quiver in her voice, it wasn't a game. It was the truth. "Why didn't you just call the police?" She laughed. Dry, bitter, short. "They are the police." She pulled something out from under the couch, a small metal capsule, unmarked. Hard, heavy, sealed. "They're looking for this. This is all that's left. Give it to a man named Martin Rendon. He used to be a prosecutor. Now he's just a history teacher in the provinces. He knows what to do with it." Tom took the capsule. His fingers went cold. Suddenly, there was a noise outside. The crunch of a branch. Then another. And more. She jumped up. "Go. They're here. You have 5 minutes. I won't leave you. You have to. If you stay, we'll both be gone. But if you go, there's a chance." He hesitated. But his survival instinct and the realization that she was right won. Tom kicked the window open with an old chair and jumped out. The forest was dark as an ink blot. He ran, holding the capsule tightly like a heart. Behind him, there was the dull sound of a door being kicked in. Then a woman's scream. And a gunshot. He didn't turn around when Tom Hardy stopped. His hands were shaking. Not from fear, at least that's how he explained it. But from tension, from overconcentration. It was like a scene where you're on the verge of failure, but you know you can still hold back the emotion and the scene will be real. But this wasn't a movie. He ran to his car, hid the capsule in the compartment under the seat. A moment. A deep breath. The key in the lock. The engine roared. And in a few seconds he was racing away from the estate, from the darkness, from that woman. And even more so, from himself. From the questions he shouldn't be asking. The drive back seemed longer. The city lights barely broke through the fog on the horizon. The phone was silent. No new messages. No calls. 3:21 a.m. Tom had parked at the wrong place. He chose a small parking lot outside the center, in the area where he had once lived before he became famous. From there, he could see the London Eye, a giant wheel that seemed to be an ironic witness to this night that I in the darkness of the cabin. He pulled out the capsule. It was heavy, it felt like something more than just metal inside. No visible seams. But on one side, a microscopic hole. From the look of it, a magnetic lock. It was not just a container, it was technology. And someone had invested resources in it. A lot. Tom remembered her words, pass this to Martin Rendon. He opened his phone and entered the name in the search. The answer was minimal, one entry in the old news database. Martin Rendon, a former prosecutor, resigned after a mysterious case against a high-ranking official in 2012. Then, silence. As if he had been erased from life, and only on the small school website did Tom find a mention of Martin, a history teacher, a small town called Whitley, Berkshire. A school for 300 students. No phone number. Just an address, Tom thought. It was still night. There were still a few hours until dawn. But something in him told him it was dangerous to wait. There was more to this capsule than he had thought. And if that woman, if she was no longer safe, it was not just her story. That he started the car and drove away. 5:03 a.m. Whitley, Berkshire, the town was asleep. Small houses, no cars on the road. The silence was so deep that every step on the pavement sounded like a gunshot. Tom found the house a modest one, with a white picket fence and an old letterbox. No light in the windows. But something about it felt right. Safe. Like a place where the truth still lived. That he knocked. A moment of silence, then a sound from behind the door. A slow step. The lock. The door opened. A man in his 60s stood on the threshold, gray-haired, with a piercing gaze and hands like a sculptor's. He stared at Tom silently. And didn't ask who he was. You brought her, he said calmly, did you know? She was my student. Once. I taught her to see what others ignored. And she paid the price for it. He invited Tom inside. The kitchen was old but tidy. On the table was a map. It had markings, photographs, articles on it. This is no longer just a game. You've gone deeper than most. And now, he pointed to the capsule, you'll have to decide if you want to know the truth. I didn't ask for it. She chose you, Martin interrupted. And there's always a reason for that. He placed the capsule against a small device that looked like a reader. A click. The capsule opened. Inside was a microchip, 2 photos, and an audio message. Tom took the photo. On one was a boy. He was about 5 years old. His eyes were big and anxious. On the other was the same boy, but now in some kind of institution's uniform. And next to him, a man whose face Tom knew, from the front page, "Who's that?" Martin sighed, "The Home Secretary." The audio recording began with a crackle. The sounds were faint, like breathing in the cold, but they made Tom stare intently into the microphone. It was a woman's voice, the same one he had heard at the estate. "This is a message for whoever holds this capsule. If you're listening, it means I didn't escape. And if so, I trust you. But remember, they already know you exist." Tom clenched his fists. His name is David Morley. In public, he's a minister. In documents, he's the curator of the Family Perspective program. But in reality, he heads a shadowy network of child trafficking. Orphans, refugees, lost documents. Hundreds of missing children, those who have disappeared without a trace. And it's all covered up by social services, juvenile courts, and silence. She paused, as if listening to every word she said before speaking. The recording continues with a conversation. A real one. "I recorded it at great risk. They didn't know I had a microphone plugged into the conference line. This is evidence. It's not much. But sometimes one truth is louder than 1,000 silences." A click. Then voices. One male. One ominously calm. "Take this little guy away. Nobody wants him anyway. What if there are relatives? No one will ask questions. We've done it before. More is always better." Then names. Dates. Code words. The recording lasted 3 minutes. 3 minutes that would make anyone listening stop breathing. When it was over, Martin turned off the device. A silence that seemed louder than the recording fell. This can't be true," Tom whispered. "It's true," Martin answered calmly. "I knew about him. In 2012, I opened a case. 2 weeks later, my daughter had an accident. A month later, I left the prosecutor's office." Tom clenched his fingers. "What do I do now?" "Decide how far you're willing to go." Martin handed him a sheet of paper with the investigative journalist's contacts. She, he said, was one of the few who hadn't sold out yet. Tom took the sheet of paper, but before he could say anything, there was a knock on the window, deftly. Twice. Then again. Martin instantly turned off the light. He pointed to Tom at the back door. But it was too late. A voice from the darkness said, "Tom Hardy. We know you're inside. Come out. You're not a threat. This is a warning." Tom stopped. He opened the door. A man in a dark suit was standing outside. Tall, expressionless. But his eyes were like scanners. "Do you know who I am?" he asked. "No. But I guess that should bother me." "Not necessarily. I'm just a person who cleans up the mess. What you've learned is too much. But we value your status. Your audience. And your silence." "Did you just offer me a deal?" "It's simple. You didn't see anything. You were tired. It was a dream. You'll get paid. Your business will improve. And never again. Never again will anyone mention that woman. She's a mistake. And you're a star." Tom was silent. And then he said, "And if I say no?" The man cocked his head to the side. "Then, Mr. Hardy, we will make everyone believe that you have long been gone. Only they do not know yet." Tom closes the door. Martin hands him an envelope. "Go to her. The journalist. She is waiting, and you? I have long been a silent witness. Now it is your turn to speak. The road led through empty country lanes, as tangled as a maze. Tom Hardy was driving the rental car that Martin had given him to replace his own. It was lit up, he said. The probability that it was already being tracked was close to 100%. Outside the window, dawn was filling the sky with a pale orange. The landscape was as if from another era: fields, old barns, farmhouses. Everything looked peaceful. But inside Tom was seething with tension that no picture of nature could quell. He looked at the journalist's contact information again: Grace Delacroix. Independent investigation. Bristol. Contact, personal meeting only. Martin had warned him, no calls. No letters. Only in person. Only like this, but he hadn't driven 20 miles when he noticed a black Range Rover in his rearview mirror. At first, nothing suspicious. But after 10 minutes, he was still there. Then another 10. And even when Tom turned sharply onto a secondary road, the car followed him. At a safe distance. But constantly. He stepped on the gas. Not too much so as not to attract attention, but enough to see if the tail would react. It reacted. Damn. Tom drove onto another road, through an old forest that led to a forgotten railway station. There, between the trees, he turned sharply, entered a gravel path, braked, and killed the engine. Silence. The trees rustled. The birds woke up. A few seconds later, a black Range Rover flashed behind. It didn't stop. Either they didn't notice, or they wanted me to think they didn't notice. Tom got out. He walked through the forest to another road. There was no car there. He quickly pulled up his hood, changed direction, and decided to walk a few miles. Until he reached the point Martin had marked, a cafe on the outskirts of Bristol. Grace was waiting for him there. Bristol. 7:18 a.m. The cafe was small, almost inconspicuous. The remains of the sign, the tables inside were empty. Only one person sat in the corner: a woman of about 35, wearing a dark coat, with short hair, and a laptop in front of her. Tom recognized her from a photo in a magazine, Grace Delacroix. He sat down opposite her. She didn't even look up. They've been watching for a long time, she said calmly. You have 3 minutes until they realize you're here. Tom placed the capsule in front of her. She instantly hid it under the laptop, pressed a few keys. The screen went blank. Did you see the contents? Partially. A recording. Photo. Name Morley. That's enough. That's deadly information. Why don't they just kill those who know? Grace smiled. Sad. Because they're playing a different game. They don't kill right away. They transform. They reshape. They smear the truth so thinly that it becomes ridiculous. And those who don't break, they make madmen. Tom swallowed. And what are you going to do with it? I have a platform. People. A channel. I can pass it on. But only once. And we have to be sure it gets into the right hands. Because if the information leaks to the wrong place, we'll be wiped out. Tom felt someone standing in the doorway of the cafe. He looked around, and froze. A familiar silhouette stood in the doorway. A tall man in a hat. His eyes were from the past. It was Nathan Hale. Tom's old friend. A former stuntman. The man they'd worked with on 3 films together. And the last man he'd expected to see here. Tom, Nathan said. Come out with me. We'll just talk. You work for them. I'm working to keep you from dying. If you don't come out, Grace won't come out either. Tom looked at the reporter. She wasn't scared. She just nodded. Pretend you agree. But the carrier will stay with me. If they kill us, the information will go on the air immediately. Tom slowly got up. He walked over to Nathan. Did you betray me? No, Tom. I'm trying to save you. But you're playing a game where there are no winners. I'm already playing. And not alone. They left the cafe. Tom and Nathan disappeared down a side street. Grace was left behind with the capsule. But she knew, now the race would begin. Against time. Against lies. Against the greatest threat of all, the street they found themselves on was almost dead, no soul, no sound, just the echo of their footsteps. Tom walked a little behind Nathan, hands in his pockets, head bowed. The wind crept between the houses, as if listening to every word. So what now? Tom asked. Will you take me to them? Nathan stopped. He turned. His face was tired, his eyes deep, full of sadness. I took you to a place where you have to make your own decision. You know what's inside the capsule. You knew everything from the beginning. Yes. And were you silent? Not exactly. Nathan took an old photo from his pocket. It showed a boy. The same one in the capsule photo. Tom stared in disbelief. Is that your son? My nephew. He disappeared 3 years ago. Everyone thought he had escaped. The police closed the case 3 weeks later. But I knew it was more than that. I went into the system. I watched. I did what they demanded. But I waited for the moment to destroy it from the inside. Tom was silent. His heart was beating slowly. Every word Nathan said became a shard that shattered his idea of betrayal. Then why did you stop me? Because you weren't ready. You weren't prepared for this, Tom. This isn't a scene. This isn't a take. This is war. Tom looked him straight in the eye. I'm still going to see it through. Then don't go alone, Nathan said. I'll show you where they keep the other records. The other evidence. If we collect everything, it won't be possible to hide it. Meanwhile, Bristol. 08:15 Grace was sitting in the car. In her hands was a capsule. She plugged it into a secure system. The data read slowly. Her eyes scanned the lines: documents, letters, files. Names. Dates. Photos. Evidence. The phone rang. An unfamiliar number. Delacroix, she said. If you publish it, it will be your last investigation. The voice rasped. Then listen carefully, she replied coldly. If I don't get in touch in 5 hours, the recording will go to 10 independent sources. And not over the internet. Over people. Real people who aren't afraid. You can't stop them all. She hung up. For the first time in years, there was no fear in her voice. 4:30 p.m. Secret location, outskirts of London. Tom and Nathan entered an abandoned warehouse complex. Inside was a basement with dozens of boxes. Each contained documents, flash drives, videotapes. Archives of missing cases. Hundreds. Tom was shocked. They gathered what they had and headed to Grace Point. 20:12, broadcast. The journalist looks into the camera. She is not in the studio, in a room, the lights are dim. On the table in front of her are materials. My name is Grace Delacroix. And today we are going to show you a story that they didn't want you to see. It's not about a scandal. It's about the truth. The truth that people paid for with their lives. The video starts playing, the minister's voice, the sound of a boy, documents. Photos. Testimony, Anne. Tom Hardy. He is sitting next to him. For the first time, not as an actor. As a man who has become the face of the truth. Afterward, in the coming days, millions of people will see the recording. An investigation will begin. Dozens of officials will resign. Others will disappear. But they will no longer be able to silence the world. Tom will be criticized. There will be those who will call it PR. But there will also be something else, looks of gratitude. The looks of those whose children will no longer disappear without a trace. Grace will receive an award, but will live under guard. Nathan will disappear again, and Tom. He will return to the theater. To a small stage. Without cameras. Without fame, and every time he goes on stage, he will remember one night. One text message, and one woman who could not escape, but gave him a chance to save others.